So here's what's been going on with us. January has flown by. Can't believe it's almost over. And Daniel, you know, but we've had it's weird with the venue. The bookings can be really unpredictable. And we had a month last year that was our first month ever where we didn't book a wedding, which really kills our cash flow because the deposits help with cash flow. So
there is no cash flow.
Yeah, other than other revenues coming in, there was none of that, which was significant. So anyway, it ended up being just an awesome gift to Jill and I to think about what we put our hope in, and even just looking kind of at brass tacks of, okay, how do we approach cash flow? Do we want it to be as reliant on new bookings as it is? So we've made some changes. But anyway, it's been really cool to see in January. It has just been an awesome month. We've met so many great couples. Like the Lord has brought people, it always fascinates me how people find the farm. Like you guys live here in Lexington, so it kind of makes sense that you would at least know of it,
Right.
For your daughter's wedding, Chad. But yeah, we have people coming from all over that I am so glad to have met, and I can say confidently Big Spring is the perfect fit for their wedding day, and the Lord has just provided in that, and it's been really cool to see. And it's been a good reminder to have gone through the season of not having to remember, like, okay, now that we're in this season of, wow, things are going really well, I don't want to fall into I don't want to fall into putting my hope in that. I just want to acknowledge it, be grateful for it, and then and then keep putting one foot in front of the other. So that's a big update. I don't know awesome. If I'm interested to hear what's going on with you in January, because I make up that the bakery or at least the cafe is probably slower in January. Mm-hmm. Is that the case though? Just because it's a small
January
town, it's a bit
has
of a
been
seasonal... lean.
LEAN is kind of the term for just across the board.
Yeah,
January is our slowest month. Students are gone for half of January. All the wholesale accounts are ordering less. We only do one bread day in January. Just feels slow, lean, and I'm really excited to see February. Yeah. But I there's so much. The big takeaway for me, business-wise, is I want to be better about budgeting business-wise off my December, January numbers than I do off our May and October numbers. It makes so much sense, and it sounds so simple, but I can quickly budget off.
Cherry pick those big months.
Yeah, May. Dude, we could buy 17 new pickup trucks. So that's a big takeaway for us, is to be better about that. Buddy, do you want to give the grand intro?
Yes, so we are grateful to have Chad Mayr. Pronounce that correctly. Good. Don't look at how he spells it. It's confusing. Grateful to have Chad on the podcast today. Chad has done several things in his life. We'll get into some of it. That's really interesting, and currently owns a few businesses. The ones I'm aware of are in the Laundromat and the service laundry and the self-wash laundry side of things, if I'm referencing those correctly. But yeah, so I think it's cool, your journey from, gosh, what was it, 15 years or more in ministry, and then leaving that and going into an entrepreneurial career with kids, with still kids in the house even, and making that transition. So I'm excited to hear a lot about all of those things, and we're grateful to have you on, man.
Oh gosh, I'm thrilled. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. If we can start, we don't need to marinate in your childhood very long, but I think what is fascinating to Buddy and I is kind of where you were in the young life realm, kind of describe that, and then your transition to owning laundromats. Like, can you tell us about that transition and what led to it too?
Sure. Well, Young Life, I wasn't one of those Young Life kids. If you know anything about Young Life, it's kind of this ministry that creates its own volunteers and people who come on staff, and I wasn't, but Melissa was really big in Young Life. So once we got married, and I was a Campus Crusade for Christ guy, I'd kind of been involved with them. And so it's fascinating because I applied for Young Life and was interviewed I say I was turned down for more jobs at Young Life than anybody. It was actually 10 years of interviewing at different places in the country to come on staff with Young Life. And then when they finally lowered the standard and let me in, it was amazing. But it's funny how in those 10 years, what you learn from the Lord, like when we first applied, we had no children. By the time we actually got a job 10 years later, we had 4. And we moved from Texas, which was all we ever knew. That's where we met. I met 8th grade and kind of grew up together. And then to leave family, friends, a great church, a great community, and go to New York, which I always say if a Texan moves from Texas to New York, God has to be involved, because there was nothing in me that wanted to go to New York as far as the weather. And
Did you go upstate New York?
No,
Or city?
no. In my mind, as a Texan, anything in New York was Buffalo, but it was considered upstate.
Okay.
But it was the Catskills, so Delaware Valley,
Okay.
tri-state area, Catskill Mountains. There's a camp there, and it was great. It was the best, probably 9-10 years of our life. And then you look back and you go, that was the kids. The kids had this incredible upbringing. Loved it, and ended up being with Young Life for 15 years. Had moved to Lexington, I guess 7 years ago, after an opportunity to serve in a larger capacity. And really, still to this day, would say I only have great things about Young Life. Probably some of the greatest people I've ever worked with or ever will work with. But in 2019, before COVID, there was just a stirring of what's next. You know, we have 4 kids, 3 were in college. Our youngest, Micah, was, we knew he'd be leaving the house soon. So Melissa and I just kind of started talking about, do we feel like it'll be Young Life? Would we move to Colorado where the headquarters is? Would we stay in this role? And you know how that is when you just start to think and pray and talk about things. And I have a great friend, actually my college roommate, that just mentioned to me, you should listen to this podcast or read a book by a fellow named Brent Beshore, who is with Permanent Equity, kind of a play on private equity. And it blew my mind when I actually listened, because I had these preconceptions about what private equity was, and it wasn't anything I was attracted to, but his group was just generous, thoughtful. They have this great policy. They call it the no asshole policy. You have to bleep that out. But when you read it, it reads almost like the gospel, like this idea of work with people you like. How do you serve people, buy businesses, hold them for the long term. So much of what they said just resonated with me. So that set me down this path of just thinking about this idea of acquiring a business and leading with some values that were dear to me and some skills that I kind of hoped I had acquired over the years. So that was
Really
a start.
cool.
Wow.
And when you started looking for businesses, how did that search begin?
Well, I mean, slowly and ignorantly. I mean, it's just, thank God for the internet, right? Like, I first read his book, Messy Marketplace, which is really written from kind of the for a seller to say, these are things you need to think about. And I read it really just to try to understand all the terms. I mean, every industry has their own terms.
Yeah.
Due diligence and EBITDA and things that I was like, well, what does that mean? And even a lot about structuring deals and finance. Like I had run other people's operations and kind of done P&L, but not really done a lot of finance or creative financing or even really what you'd call accounting. And so I read the book several times actually just to see, do I understand this? And I would research. So kind of in my spare time, just reading that book, and then you'd find something on a podcast and they'd say a name. So I'd read their book and listen. And you start to kind of overall start to create a little bit of an understanding of what's out there. And I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole for a long time, but really just being curious. And fortuitously, in a weird way, when COVID happened, as you can imagine, we were in a large group gathering business, so things slowed down quite a bit. And so there seemed to be time and space to think and read and explore. And so
so you were, for everybody listening, you were well, I don't your title exactly, but you were managing over a group of Young Life camps. Is that correct? What was your title?
Divisional coordinator.
Divisional coordinator, yeah. So, but Young Life camps are these summer camps that are based in the Christian ministry of Young Life, and it's Yeah, it is the large group gathering business for sure. So yeah, I can't imagine 2020 for everybody at Young Life, but especially you, seeing that you would have some free time makes sense. So where did you start looking for businesses? Like,
Well-
how did you find, like, because it's sort of, people ask Daniel and I questions like this all the time. Like, how did you decide, like, why bakery,
Right.
why a farm, why a wedding venue?
Right.
So where were you looking?
Well, I think
to find these
it
businesses.
evolved. I think I read another great book and well-known book is Buy Then Build by Walker Deibel, or Deibel, I think is his name. I say it right, but it's a great book, and it kind of walks you this idea of why you should consider acquiring an existing business. Mm-hmm. See, I consider y'all entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I feel like when you buy an existing business, that's less entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. A little safer. I think I'm more of a calculated risk taker. And but his book was just really encouraging and saying, think of it this way. And so I started doing that. In my mind, I thought Melissa and I would probably have to move to a different city, mm-hmm. a larger city, to find a business that would meet some of what we would need as far as salary and replacing that and be able to carry, handle the debt payments and all that. And there's models that different books have, and I was nerdy enough to try to create my own models, and then literally just got on Biz Buy Sell, which is kind of a website that
I love cruising that every once in a while.
It's addicting and it's dangerous. Biz Buy Sell, and it's just a website where people list businesses. And my experience is a lot of them aren't for sale anymore, or they're not great buys, but it allows you to start thinking about the process, signing a non-disclosure agreement, getting a SIM, which is just basically some basic information about the business. And then, so to answer your question, I in my mind was looking in Virginia, mm-hmm.
But probably not Lexington.
No.
Interesting.
I just figured there wasn't one that could meet our criteria.
Right. Yeah, it's a small town.
And you wanted something in the service industry, did you?
Most likely. I mean, I would say that, again, so much of your knowledge is borrowed from other people. And so as I listened, it was like, okay, I want something that's enduringly profitable. Mm-hmm. So something that has a proven record of being profitable. Somewhere has a healthy culture. The owner actually cares about what happens to their employees after they leave. They've led well. It's not all about how much money can they get out of the deal. And I think service seems to be what would be natural for me, but at the time I was nervous of being too limiting. Mm-hmm. People advised you don't ever go into food or restaurants, or mm-hmm. so you're kind of listening, but you're all also trying to be open-minded. Mm-hmm. So that's really where we started, and I think the big kind of change that ended up leading us to be able to stay here was Melissa, my amazing wife, was like, I don't think, tap the brakes, because I was starting to talk about, are you ready to move to DC or Richmond or maybe Charlotte? And she kind of knows how I can obsess. So she said, slow down. And so then I thought, okay, well, what could I acquire that we could still live here? Mm-hmm. So that's when I shifted toward something a little bit, almost more of on the side. And it was over Christmas, because, again, Christmas is a little slower. So when I get bored, I get in trouble. So I just started cold calling. I started thinking laundromats, car washes, storage facilities, the usual.
Yeah.
And so I just started cold calling laundromats until I found an owner that would actually talk to me. And I was real fortunate, found one that he owns 8 laundromats now and 4 car washes. And he said, sure, I'll tell you about it. And we talked for a while. Great guy. Pete, and still a friend. Talked to him last week. But kind of just a casual conversation. He educated me about some percentages and numbers and this and that. And then we moved on our way. And it was 3 to 6 months later, I was at a meeting and I got a phone call and he said, hey, are you still looking for a laundromat? And I said, well, I might be. And he said, well, I know the guy in Lexington wants to sell.
No way.
And
That's awesome.
I said, I'd love to talk to him. So he said, well, let me see his number. And I texted him and we grabbed a beer at Devil's Backbone. And he said, yeah, I may sell. And I said, well, I may buy. And
let's talk.
We talked. And
wow.
Can you give us this is sort of like when you said like the usual storage building, laundromat, that kind of. So I've gone down the YouTube rabbit hole of the guys that will talk about those types of businesses on there. But one thing I feel like they don't really give you a good concrete of like, hey, here's an industry standard. Like if you have a laundromat, you're going to want to be seeing, X ROI. You're going to want this is what your profitability is really going to be or whatever. Obviously, that's going to change way across the board, right? Depending on what city you're in and all that stuff. But would you say, like, is there like there's different industries. Like I know Daniel can give a pretty good ballpark for a bakery, on baked goods.
Margins,
Here's your cost. Here's what you should be profiting. Can you give us any kind of like benchmarks for folks that are listening that are thinking laundromat, thinking, all right, I'm looking at this laundromat. This is my first time looking at a laundromat's numbers. What would you say to that, Chad?
I mean, like you said, every laundromat's different. The number of turns is what you'll hear a lot in the laundry business, how many turns your machine's getting. But I would say first thing is be skeptical of the internet because folks sell it as completely passive or semi-passive at best. But for me, what I knew that when I purchased it, that it would be a side gig. Like it because of the town, the size, the population, it's not going to generate enough revenue to support my salary. But that really is not my motivation. I mean, I just love the idea of something doing new, learning some new stuff. But when you're looking at a laundromat, like any business, you've got to look at what are your utilities and what are your rent, and controlling those percentages of your gross, profit. But I would say a good business before you put debt on it, because again, if you pay cash, that's going to be different than if you take out over leverage or whatever. But I would say that you should expect a 20 to 30% before you take out anything for yourself or debt.
Yeah.
So again, how you just define net profit, you got to ask some questions before you go with that. But they should be profitable if they're clean, and really if they're clean. And that's just a straight laundromat. The big thing in laundromats nowadays is to add an attendant and to start doing wash, dry, fold business, which we were talking to your wife about earlier. This idea
Desperately need here at the Powers household.
Yes, it's a fast growing industry. A lot of people are getting into it with software and home deliveries and that sort of stuff.
Cool.
Which we haven't scratched the surface really. We haven't done anything at the laundry. So basically, what I did is just came in, I haven't taken any money out of it. Well, I'll correct myself a little bit. First year, all the money went back in to get new pipes, new electrical. The place just had been well used for a while, and that was my intent probably the first 5 years. New equipment, new plumbing, new electrical, and then continue to pay off the debt. I mean, the one thing I love about acquiring businesses is if they're a good one and you've looked at them, the business is paying it for itself in addition to whatever salary you can draw and providing for, employees. So that just got me excited. This idea of it just made sense.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Can you describe just real quick for me, but when you said you purchased a laundromat without the wash, dry, fold, I just pictured washers, dryers lined up in a row, and it's by coin or card or cash. Is this what you're describing? And your office, you said, was in the bathroom?
Yeah. So I moved my office to the old bathroom so I could be there, just so I could, one, because I needed an office and didn't like it being at home. And it was just fun. I'd come in early, clean the laundromat to save from paying someone else to do it, and then fix a couple machines, do my day job, take a walk around 2 or 3 times and give people quarters if the machine stole their quarters, and then at the end of the day, cleaned it up. We're 24 hours, which is unusual.
Oh, okay. I've been in there one time, which is kind of a funny story. It was before you owned it. Yeah. We had a wedding here at the farm a few years ago. It was a beautiful May day, and this bride wanted to do an alfresco dinner with all the tables set out on the lawn by the barn, and it's beautiful day. Why not? Well, everything's set up. All the place settings, all the flowers are out there. And as can happen out here in the mountains, a huge, dark thunderstorm rolls in over the mountain. And it's like you can see blue sky, to the north and to the south. But out of the west, this big storm comes. And it soaked all of the tables. Like all of our crew, all the caterers, the planners, we're getting soaked. We're running all the flowers back under roof in the barn. But anyway, we're like, what do we do with all these soaked linens? Because once this storm blows by, after like 10 minutes, it's beautiful out again. So I took all the linens to your laundromat, and because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to dry all these. And luckily, nobody was in there. And I just took over the wall of dryers, and I had like napkins in one, and spread out all these linens through the rest of these dryers. Anyway, it saved me one day. And so the bride, none of the family, no one even knew. I drove them back out, and we put them back all on the tables.
Well,
Gosh.
It was insane.
Yeah. Little anxiety.
Oh my gosh, it's one of those when people ask me what are some of the craziest things that have happened at a wedding. That's definitely one of my top 5.
Gosh.
But yeah, that's really cool. So you started sort of with the laundromat as a side hustle. Oh, and I like what you said too that I wanted to highlight about a business when you, like, even if you have debt on it, if it's paying the debt and paying employees and paying all of its costs, and you're able to make money on it, then that's where you want to be. Even especially even for a side hustle, like that's not. I think of we bought this house we call the Midland House, turned it into a short-term rental, and after we bought the house with a loan, renovated it with cash, we got it appraised and did a cash-out refinance, paid ourselves back all the money we had into the house, and now it pays the mortgage, pays the utilities, and pays me and my brother that are partners on it every month the profit. So it's crazy because we essentially have $0 in cash in the building, and it's always gaining in value, and it's paying us on top of it. It's really wild.
It almost seems like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. When I was looking at the numbers, I was like, did we just do this? We did. Okay. That's how this works. It's hard to calculate an ROI on $0 when you're making money on $0 that you've put in at this point,
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, I'm a calculated risk taker. It took me a while to build the models, to read the books, and get comfortable. And that was the fun of doing biz by sell, because you could plug some in. And then the laundromat was kind of a first dry run of, okay, are my assumptions right? And it was something I could put our toe in the water. And again, I mean, there's laundromats out there that are 10 times as big as mine. They're beautiful. People go in, and I mean, especially in bigger cities. And I mean, they've changed. I mean, my mother-in-law just sent me a picture of one from Texas that she goes to, and I mean, it's as nice as any.
It's got like fancy furniture.
Furniture,
I've seen those.
A little library for kids, a coffee bar, and it's like, are people going in for date night? I mean, it's amazing. So it has the industry's changed or is changing, and mine is still being open 24 hours a day is probably because of the population. We're able to do that. Some of my friends who own ones in other cities, they would say if we did that, everything would be stolen overnight. And so we're fortunate being in Lexington. But I do think that helps us attract some customers that might go elsewhere. But yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So that's how I kind of first got my toe in the water. And I think we were saying earlier a little bit about how much I enjoyed connecting with, again, Young Life was so good, but as you learn yourself and how God designed you, like I had forgotten, because the higher sounds big, the more I was in different roles in Young Life, the further I got away from really feeling like I was interacting with folks and solving problems and improving and making change, impacting change. And so it was just neat in this laundromat, working in a bathroom. Like I was just rejuvenated with just cleaning and fixing machines and talking to people.
Yeah,
and that kind of
meeting a need.
Yeah, I just loved it, and making it was fun to fix things and make them better. So that's kind of what got us started in the laundromat.
On that, 2 questions. Was there debt associated with that purchase?
Yeah. So what I did, great question. So obviously there's 100 different ways to finance things. With this one, SBA loans are amazing. And this was a small SBA loan. The larger they get, some people say they're pretty tough. They get a little bit hairy with all the paperwork. Because this one was below a certain threshold, it was relatively straightforward. So we had refinanced our house and some land for a variety of reasons, and so that helped. Sold one of the lots, and so we put that down as a down payment and got an SBA loan. And
interest rates were really good back then too.
Yes, I meant incredible.
Well, why would you not?
Right. And so with the laundromat, and I know you just bought one recently, is owning the real estate important to you as you're looking at the purchase? And do you own that or do you lease it?
No, we rent. I think I'm fairly ambivalent. I've heard other people say, keep your business separate from your real estate, because as you grow, you want to be able to move and be nimble. And that if you own real estate that actually can become problematic. But that's other people's experience. I can't say that I've experienced that. But so no, we rent at the laundromat, which there's some risk in that because there's a lot of infrastructure for a laundromat, and it's really why it's hard to get a new one because of the sewer hookup charges and having large water lines. Some cities just aren't big fans of that.
I can't imagine today too, just with the cost of building materials and everything.
Right. So for me to buy an existing and upgrade it just made a little bit more sense. But the most recent business I acquired, the dry cleaners, same thing. I lease. I think you try to get first right of refusal for purchase, and you try to get longer leases and options just to protect yourself. But that's at least the angle I've taken.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't know. That's a good question because I didn't know. I guess maybe I assumed you'd buy the real estate too, but it makes sense. Like, you don't need to. That's just maybe an added expense. Wouldn't it be more profitable to
just buy
have
the
a
business?
really healthy lease that you can roll with your business in?
Yeah. I mean, especially when you're coming in and not knowing for the dry cleaners more than the laundromat. The laundromat, if you're looking at the city, the size, are we going to go out and build a $2 million new facility for,
Right.
You can use some.
It's a long horizon on getting that money back.
Right. And I've seen some go out of business that you see these beautiful laundromats in other towns. And there was one in Charlottesville that was amazing. That was beautiful. I don't know what happened, but I know that it was amazing. COVID hit, and by the end of COVID, they were out of business. So,
Did you have a question?
No, those are mine up to this point.
So I'd love to hear about. So you have the laundromat. What was the next step?
What was it? Laundromat, and just still working in Young Life, and again, was kind of thinking, well, when Micah graduates, we'll start looking and. Knowing that we'd be able to divest a laundromat pretty easy if we needed to. And really just doing nothing special. Ended up going to breakfast with the former owners of the dry cleaners just to get to know them. I don't know about y'all, but I do that every now and then. If I see someone at church or hear their name, and I'll just say, hey, will you grab a meal with me? And we did, and incredible people. I was very just impressed right away. It was a father and a son and his wife who'd had it for 38 years and did a tremendous job. Just, you would know their name, their reputation preceded them, and just had a great breakfast. And if I'm honest, after breakfast I thought, well, he's got a son, so
Not an option.
Yeah, not an option. Gonna pass that on. Yeah,
great breakfast. And I didn't think much about it, but again, things evolved. We ended up talking, and they, as the Lord would have it, they were considering divesting of a portion of. They were a corporation, had multiple lines of business. They were considering divesting of part of it, and they said, "Would you consider it?" And I said, "Of course." So we went.
That was at the breakfast, or
no,
follow up?
This was later.
Okay.
And again, it's so I love looking back and seeing how the Lord prepares things. And so those years of me just reading books and building models and being kind of nerdy and asking for sample business plans and plugging them in prepared me so that when someone actually was sitting across the table and said, "Would you consider this?" I could say with a little bit of confidence,
yeah,
I'd love to see it. And actually having a process to walk through to give you a little bit of. I have to satisfy that calculated risk taker. I mean, I'm not. I always call it the brave entrepreneurs who just kind of go out and do it. I'm not that guy. I need some numbers. And
Daniel and I probably have a lot to learn from you, though.
I was gonna say this is so healthy.
We need
This
you.
is healthy
We need
to
you in
hear.
our lives.
yeah. Well, I probably need y'all in my life too. It's like pull the trigger.
yeah. We can be good influences on each other.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's.
but
cool.
it's just again, it was amazing. You hear so many horror stories when you listen to podcasts. If people are interested in this sort of line of conversation, there's a great podcast, Acquiring Minds, and then used to be Think Like an Owner. Although I think some of his content has changed, but both really good. If you look back in our archives, a great podcast. But you hear horror stories like the owner. It wasn't what the owner told me, or the previous owner told me, or there was. I walked into all these skeletons. I mean, for me, it was amazing. Everything they said was true. They still helped me. The previous owner was there yesterday. We're gonna have beer next week to celebrate 1 year anniversary. So
Wow.
just amicable,
That's
helpful.
perfect, yeah.
It's amazing that, and so I consider myself fortunate that now there's surprises in the business, but nothing because of them being, not being forthright.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask how you financed that? Was there owner financing involved? How much were they involved? How
Yeah,
much did
people
you
ask us
pull?
that all the time too. Like,
Yeah.
how do you fund this, or how do you think I should get money to do this thing? And it's like,
Right.
well, there's so many options.
There is so many options, and I think that it's a great question for people to think about in advance. So let me back up, and I'll get to that. Okay. So again, when I read the book by Walker, Buy Then Build, he really takes you through a process. So I ended up I set up a website just to have to answer some of the questions, like what were my missions, what was my values, what would my criteria be, because it's so easy. It's like going for a job search. There's so many jobs you can't decide. So and if you're interested, again, I'm probably the only one who's ever clicked on it, but Farview Holdings, it's named after my wife's grandfather had a century farm in Iowa, Farview Farms. Farview Holdings, not Fairview. That's what comes up, but it's examples someone could use to go, okay, how did we think about it? In case I ever actually had someone who wanted to sell, I could say, well, you can look at this website and you can see what we believe or our values. But I had a couple of buddies that do pretty well. And beforehand, I'd said, would you be interested? And they both said we would be very, interested in investing. We ended up not really going that route, but it helped me as I went out to brokers, because in the business buying industry, it's similar to real estate agents. There's brokers. So you'd talk to a broker about your criteria and what you're looking for, and they're vetting you, right? Like, okay, who's this guy?
Yeah. Is he really legit?
Yes,
Yeah.
as they should.
Yeah.
Because they usually work on commission from a sell. And but similar. There's SBA is a good way to go. Again, depending on your credit and your ability to work through some paperwork. There's always, if you can pay cash, obviously, down payment. I don't know of many people who've done conventional, but I think it can be done depending on the business. I think you'll hear in that kind of acquisition world, and I'm no expert, but you'll hear a lot of people say you've got to have some seller financing because it gets some skin in the game. It aligns your interest, and it shows that they have confidence that they're handing this business off to you. And to what degree that is negotiable. And I would say a lot of people say the more the better. And then there's always investors, right? And again, in this kind of ETA world, entrepreneurship through acquisition is that's an acronym.
That's good.
That early on I learned.
ETA,
I actually wrote someone
like
and said, I actually was in it for several months, and I wrote a guy and said, what does ETA mean? Like, I can't find it on the internet. Everybody throws it around, and I just keep repeating it.
Entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Yeah. That's
good.
Nice.
So in the world, you'll hear there's different levels of investors being involved. It's from search funds, which are like kind of people would maybe call the big leagues, to a self-funded search fund. So a search is just a search for a business.
Okay.
Kind of the old school search fund, I'm going to say, is big investors invest, and you are an operator that earns over time. You earn if you perform ownership of the business, and then their goal is to divest after so many years and everybody cashes out. A self-funded search fund would be somebody who maybe had their own cash and they're just going to go out and buy a business, and every in between. So in this particular case, it was there was seller financing involved, and one of those friends did put some investment in. So we do have debt, which always causes you to the anxiety and the stress of honoring the former owner and honoring your investors/debtors is a big deal.
That's cool that it puts you. I haven't thought about owner financing a business in the sense that it does keep you both like same side of the table. Like, hey, like obviously you're the operator now, but he's just as much. The seller is just as much like cheering for you and
vested
there to maybe
in the
help.
performance.
Like, hey, there's a little issue. Let me go help Chad out because I want him to keep winning.
You hope so, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I love the term that I've heard is this idea of aligning interest. And that helps me not only with investors, you could call them debtors, but they're investors, right? But also your employees, your customers, this idea of how do we align interest, because it's so easy. I take all these silly temperament tests, and one of the things in me is competition. But what I've learned about that is a lot of times competition, I catch myself competing against people rather than collaborating with them naturally. I've learned, Young Life kind of beat it out of me a lot because of ministry and this idea of collaborative efforts, but I catch myself not thinking that way. And I have to remind myself, how do I collaborate with people? How do I align interest with people? So it's a win-win.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think I struggle or have struggled with, I guess, like that exact same thing from the competitive side. I think the way I live that out is I tell myself I'm just going to do this myself, because I don't want to have to deal with bringing somebody on and then I'm competing with them or feel like they're competing with me. Yeah. So I've kind of up until a few years ago, I kind of just told myself I just got to do it all me. And it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of freedom in the decisions you can make because you're not answering to an investor or partner or whatever. But then I learned a lot less about myself. I kind of stayed in the foxhole. And I think the beauty for me of a partnership that I've been learning is like it forces me to look at myself and see how I'm really showing up, because I got somebody. It's kind of like marriage, it's like you got somebody right there with you going like, hey man, do you notice what you're doing right now?
That's a purifier, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're holding up a mirror to you. But we have 28 employees at the dry cleaning plant. And I would say similarly, like when you step into a business you know nothing about, it's very humbling. Coming out of Young Life, where I had been there 15 years, I wasn't the expert, but folks came to me for answers.
You were the man. That's you had a great reputation.
I've fooled people, but
no, just kidding.
That's right. But it's incredibly humbling when you step in and you literally, viscerally feel like without these people, we don't exist.
Doomed.
Not only customers coming in through the front door, but also the team that are running the dry cleaning machines and front counters and we have 3 different lines of business. So that is just, it's humbling in a good way, but also can cause you to wake up many times at night because you do want to feel like you could take over and run it yourself, and you just can't.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And here's another thing you'll hear a lot in ETA is I knew it because in a way I bought a business smaller than I should have bought. And what you'll hear is if you buy a business that's larger and has more cash flow and profitability, it really translates typically they have middle management. So when you come in, it actually is in a weird way easier to run because you have people to help run it. With a business that I bought at the size I bought, we bought it because it was in Lexington, and they were great people. Like it checked a lot of the list except for size in that sense. Like size in the sense of being able to have other people. So you're in this strange position, which I imagine y'all are similar, is you have to be in the weeds to a certain degree. You can't just say, well, we'll hire everybody and delegate it all out. It sounds great in a book.
I'll check in quarterly.
Right. So I love that because that's the kind of guy I am. It energizes me, but it also you feel it's more visceral.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Like you said, cash flow and all, especially that first year, because you don't really know the whole business cycle. So lots of prayer. It challenges your faith in a different way of, what you believe and who provides and what your role is in cooperating in that process.
Yeah.
So
so you were still with Young Life at the acquisition of the dry cleaner?
Well, no,
or had you stepped away?
No, I had talked to, again, Young Life is such a healthy organization. I was able to share with my supervisor that I was considering this.
Yeah.
And he was on board and supportive, and because that's the tough thing with acquisition. It could fall apart at the closing table.
At the last minute. So can you speak to the transition? How did you know when to leave Young Life and the certain security associated with financially? When did you know?
When did I know?
When did you know it was a good time?
Well, I mean, you go through due diligence. So I'm still at Young Life while I'm doing due diligence with this organization, this new business, which is, you're asking them for a lot of, at that point you've got agreements in place, non-disclosure agreements. And so they're giving your financials. They're answering every question that you can imagine, and there's lists of those out there on the internet. And I'd be happy to help people who are walking that process. So as you get those questions and you have these models where you're plugging things in, going, okay, I think if this is accurate and it performs the way it is, and I don't wreck this train, that this is what sort of cash flow, and this is what's going to cover debt. This is what could cover my salary. This is how much CapEx I need to plan on, and you take a big gulp, and then you go, I'm gonna move forward. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question there?
Yes. And so you left Young Life. Like, what did that? Was it the day you signed? You were like, okay, I'm taking the plunge.
Pretty much, pretty close.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
Turn in a notice.
So you were comfortable leaving Young Life once you saw, hey, net profits here. I think Melissa and I can pocket this much. All right, we're doing this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was confidence in the former owner. I mean, I told him actually when I turned my notice, I'm like, you got me over a barrel now because because there was still 30 days, 45 days. My memory's terrible. Melissa probably knows exactly how many days it was, but there is a period of time where you are. It's potential that something could fall apart.
And did you enter that season confident, excited, nervous, with trepidation? What was that?
All of the above.
Yeah.
There's an excitement because it's new. There's fear because you go, are my models right? Like, do I have a bad formula? This particular situation, they were completely forthright, but because it was a larger business, they were carving out a portion, and no fault of their own, but they couldn't say exactly like, okay, what percentage exactly of that person's salary went to this business?
It wasn't clearly delineated
Yes.
within the corporation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're kind of hoping that your percentages will round in the right direction and not the wrong direction.
And I just one more nerdy question, but it sounds like you relied heavy on your reading, the learning you had done on your own going into this. One question I think about is what is the value of my business? So how did were you 5 times EBITDA on the numbers they were giving you? How did you and the seller reach that? What can you speak to that for a moment?
It's a great question. I mean, again, not to nerd out, and all this is stuff I've learned, so it's not like you're born with this knowledge. Is when you're in a smaller business, I usually talk about SDE, which is seller discretionary earnings. And again, there's formulas that you can look on the internet to tell you how to calculate that. So we were talking more about SDE than EBITDA. EBITDA is typically when you're a little bit larger. And even EBITDA is not perfect. It's just something that kind of helps.
Gets you in the ballpark.
To a level playing field, assuming people are being honest, right? I mean, that's always, with the laundromat, that was always the question mark in that industry is because it's a cash business. So there's ways to basically mislead people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And fortunately, that owner, same experience, completely honest. Everything they said was true. I was very fortunate in both these scenarios, and both relationally, which is funny because I had been doing all this searching through brokers and
over Virginia,
right? And you find them next,
in your
in
backyard.
the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But in different industries, there's different multiples, is what they would call that, of whether it's SDE or EBITDA.
Right. And what is it for the dry cleaning?
Well, that depends. And again, this one's unique because it's not just dry cleaning. It's dry cleaning, it's restoration, and it's collegiate laundry. So the thing that attracted me mostly about this business was its diversity. It had optionality, resilience. It wasn't just what you would think of as just a dry cleaning facility. So when you come to multiples, there's actually some subscriptions out there that are expensive that you can buy by industry. They give like a forecast of what the industry is expected to do by the professionals, and they'll tell you kind of the businesses have been in this multiple. But I didn't do that. Mine was mostly listening and educating myself from podcasts, and then just honestly, the thing about the multiples, it really doesn't matter. If you do a good model, if it can't cash flow at a 1 multiple, then it's not worth a 1 multiple. If it can't, and if it can cash flow at a 7 or 10, great. So some of that is really you wrestling internally, which is it's a challenge. Like, because you will fall in love with the deal and you have to be careful because you can convince yourself, oh, I can make this work. And I would advise against that. Like, just be aware of how tight that can be when you introduce debt and you introduce, you want to grow, right? You don't want to buy a business and not grow. And so there's that balance of humility and also ambition, right? So to answer your question, I personally try to shoot in the 3 multiple plus or minus, but again, in a tech business, those may be up
10,
7 to 12,
20,
right?
yeah.
And so every industry is different, and I don't want to mislead people that I know it that well. And I would say different city, like a laundromat maybe in Richmond that's turning, you know,
Could have a different
Oh,
multiple, yeah.
absolutely. So it really is more about the due diligence, I'd say, in my mind.
Yeah, and it's so much of it's like the math of it. Like you're saying, you kind of get lost in the excitement of a deal. But like, well, if I pay, you know, $1 million for this place, can the business really pay me all of its current expenses and service that kind of debt? If it's not already currently servicing that kind of debt, like making sure you're factoring that in
Well, and
in
you
a
can-
very honest way of like, what if we have a little bit of a down month? Is there still enough margin there?
Right. And also the challenge is, think of you as you guys, you own your business. If you ever went to sell it, if you own it outright, you're used to it. I'm going to make this up. Let's say it's cash flowing. You're taking home $300,000 a year. Well, in your mind, you're thinking, well, it's worth 300,000 times whatever the multiple.
Yeah.
But a buyer comes in, and as soon that they're going to have to put debt on that business. Well, that's where that negotiation has to come in, and some reasonableness of how do we align our interests, because it is a different business with debt put on it, and there's more risk. And so I think that's where having a good relationship with someone you trust and being able to have honest conversations, because it's like, well, if we're going to stay at that price, or is there seller financing, can we lower that interest rate? Okay, how about the term? You guys get it. Like, there's so many ways to skin that cat in a way that, again, is mutually beneficial if folks are coming to the table with a sincere desire to make the deal happen.
One more question. Again, we have a lot to learn from you. You've said the word model about 23 times. And I maybe made one model in my whole tenure. Are these Google Docs that you created? Did you pull them from somewhere?
That's a great question.
Because Mike has mentioned them too. Your son has said, Dad has a sweet spreadsheet. I don't know how, and you plug this number in, tells me how much I'm going to earn when I get out of college or whatever it is. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Are those equipping you right now?
That's a good question. I would say I'm not like a finance background, but just through my experience, I do use Excel. But I use basic Excel. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm like an Excel guru. But again, just curiosity. Like, as I would read, so there's a book that Harvard Business Review has books, and one of them is on buying a small business, and they're a little bit on the what I would call the higher end, the search funders. This idea of you buy a business, you get investors, but they had charts of models, and so what I did, again, I'm a total nerd, is I kept working on the formulas till I could make my model match their model, so I could prove that I was thinking right. Because again, some numbers I didn't even know what they meant. Like, they would have a term, and that's what's so funny about some of these business books is they assume everybody knows what that means.
Yeah.
So I had to. It was really this nerdy, like, look it up on the internet. What does that mean? Okay, what do I think that formula would be to get that? So to be fair, that did take some experience with Excel and logic. But I'm not smart, guys. Like, I am really I always kind of joke. And it's funny because when I say I'm not smart, I just work hard. No one ever disagrees with me. They just kind of laugh and go. So that's how you know it's true.
Oh,
No one ever goes, oh, Chad, no, they just go. Yesterday I said it to somebody. Goes, well, you're persistent. I go, thank you. Like, I am persistent.
I'll take that
compliment.
Yeah. But
So you would make like
that.
theoretical models, like, okay, if I did buy this laundromat and they want this much for it, and they say it's making, you know, this revenue monthly, and these are their utilities, blah blah. That's the kind of model you're talking, and
Yes.
you'd work through. Okay, if I had debt on it, I could afford
Yeah, I'd be
this
happy to
much,
send it to you. I mean, it's just be careful because you know how you work with formulas. You change thing and you forget that you changed it, so you'd want to check.
Yeah.
But yeah. So and then you have to build it like, well, what if you had an investor? Well, what is their rate of return they expect? But it started with the Harvard Business Review, their book, trying to. But that was, to be honest, that was extremely too complicated because. But from there, you could dumb it down to something as simple as well, what if I had a loan at this percentage rate for this many years, and I wanted to put this much back into machinery. What could I draw out of it? And then you're just asking questions like, what if something happened, and how long until it would be profitable, and you're playing those kind of games. And then the magic one is, how much do I think I can grow this? Because if you can grow it and it is a good business, then you get some daylight, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what it's all about when you're, especially I guess in the ETA
yeah.
Side of things. Did I say the right acronym?
You did.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
right. I'm
I'm
so
trying
impressed.
it on. That's my first time.
Anybody in the ETA industry hears this, they'll be like, who is that knucklehead on that?
I'm gonna say it all the time now.
It sounds good. Yeah.
So
That's really helpful to. It's really helpful to hear. It seems my default is I make projections based on my enthusiasm for a product or an idea, like the baker's box. Haven't thrown one model together, whether it's a mail order frozen product. It's like, I feel so good about this. We're going to do it. We're all in. Vice this more calculated, metric based, numbers based. Okay, this input, output.
Yeah, you
That's
did like
really good
a
for me to
month's
hear.
worth of testing, shipping, and you're like, yep,
Yeah.
okay, we're doing it.
Yeah. So there's such a great tension in there somewhere for me to find. But thanks for sharing. That's great.
Sure. I mean, and for me, a lot of it was, I've always been fiscally conservative, and probably too much so. But now that the kids are, even though we've had 3 in college, it seems like forever. It's always been because I wanted to be sure the kids were taken care of. I think now that they're moving into college and Hannah's married, I'm less risk adverse financially, because for me, it's not really, honestly, even though people say sure, it's really not about the money for me, except to the point where, the kids are taken care of and Melissa is good. Beyond that, it really becomes more about impact, and am I using my giftedness in a way that makes me want to get out of bed in the morning? But there is for me right now, there's a ton of anxiety around, and that you manage it, right? Like you think through it, around just the cash flow aspect of it. And did you overpay, or did you take, is there too much debt on this, or are we growing fast enough? And we just acquired another dry cleaners last week or 2 weeks ago. So we closed on that, like making that decision, because that's a growth decision, but it pulls cash out of the business, hurts. Paying Christmas bonuses, that was one of the things I hadn't anticipated. But when the employees come to you and say, we've always got a bonus, are we getting one this year? You go,
Oh, wow.
Of course you are.
Yeah.
So then that pulls cash out of business. So that first year for me, it's been some of the calculation is maybe less, is more about just helping me get comfortable with that anxiety. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I wish I was more gung ho like you sound like you are at times. I remember I heard the podcast about the maze.
Oh yeah, the hay maze.
Yeah.
That would go down as a great learning point. For me. Getting off that quickly, what is, as you look at the future, what does growth look like for your business? Is everything under Farview Holdings? Is that, if I were to say, what's the future look like for Farview?
Well, it's a great question, because again, anybody will laugh that's been through this. Like, you get excited when you first start reading these books. I'm like, I'm going to have a holding company. And everybody's like, of course, everybody wants a holding. But I
Sounds
just,
cool.
Yeah, I was like, sounds great. So I made a website, but the website was really helpful just to clarify values and to set parameters. And then, you buy the Laundromat. I was like, all right, there you go. There's my first LLC.
Yep.
And then that's a whole learning process of all the things you've got to do to do an LLC, and the team you have to have together, of whether it's your CPA and your attorney. I mean, again, it's so humbling, because you're like, I could not do this on my own.
Yeah.
And even with them, sometimes I'm not sure I can do it. And then my idea was, this next purchase, so Universal Cleaners was going to go underneath. But then my CPA is like, yeah, it's not a good idea. It needs to be independent. I was like, there goes my whole co. But so in my mind, I would tell people, yes, it's underneath it.
Okay.
Legally, it's separate.
outside.
But the idea, the mindset, eventually for me, one of my dreams, and I don't know if is this idea of, could you grow it? Could you get operators to run these businesses in a way that's mutually beneficial, aligning our interest, and have an opportunity to do this again, either in the same industry or a different industry. That excites me. But currently, I would say the laundromat, you're just going to grow by running it well. You're probably, and you might acquire a few other laundromats, which I'd be excited about if I could. The dry cleaner is fascinating because we say dry cleaners, but it's university cleaners. It's really a platform. So there's 3 lines of business. So retail dry cleaning comes over the counter. So when you think about bringing in a dress shirt or a blouse, what people typically think of dry cleaning. And that goes downstairs to our plant. So we have a plant that processes it. But we also do collegiate laundry. So a term you'll hear is wash, dry, fold. That's kind of a new term that is real popular. So we go to some major universities, and students subscribe. They pay us on an annual basis to weekly pick up their laundry, wash, dry, fold it, and return it to them. And then the third is if there's fire or water damage to a home, insurance companies or individuals or adjusters will call us, and or contractors, I should say, will call us, and we'll go in and get all the textiles. So we would come into your house and get anything that could be restored, shoes, drapes, tablecloths, clothes, and then we have the ability to kind of restore that from mold or water damage. So in my mind, those are 3 different lines of business. And so when you think about growth, the collegiate laundry would be additional colleges and growing market penetration at those schools. Retail dry cleaning is most likely bolt-ons or add-ons. So like we just acquired another dry cleaners instance. So now we have 3 dry cleaning retail stores, but still only 1 plant. So we bring everything to a central location to process it. So I think we are interested in continue to add dry cleaners to that. And then for the restoration business, again, kind of a pipe dream perhaps, is I'd like to eventually get that big enough where it could be a standalone business. So a separate facility just to process all of that. So so that should keep us busy for a while.
Yeah.
That third one seems so scalable just because once an insurance company gets involved on a claim, it's kind of like the dollars kind of start rolling, right? To a certain extent. If you have
or is it
80
sporadic?
grand in coverage on a disaster,
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's so...
You're praying for hurricanes coming up the coast. Like, yeah, baby.
We joke about that. Like I did say, because when you're looking for business, and I said, I'm not comfortable praying for people to have fire and water damage. But I said, I did pray, like, when people have this, can we help them better than anybody else? Can we help them in a way that is sincerely concerned about their loss? Because it does feel really, really evil.
You just your fingers.
But and I'll tell you, a lesson I think for all of us is when you acquire business I had no choice but to come in humbly.
Yeah.
But that humility serves you well, because what I thought was going to be the places we would grow before we acquired the business and the first 3 or 4 months, now I'd say everything's flipped because of challenges that you aren't aware of or you oversimplify or lessons you learn. So my encouragement to anybody who's acquiring a business is, tamp your ambition for the first year and your ego enough to actually learn from the current employees and customers what they want and need before you make a mistake. Because it would have been real easy to go all in on growth in the wrong direction. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, there are parts of it that are exciting, but there's challenges. And you guys know, it's like, I need someone else to help me with that challenge. I don't know if I can afford to hire someone to help me with that challenge. Right. And so it's just this give and take. And it's, if you can either do that with kind of this joyful, this is fun mindset, or do this as this really, I'm losing my mind, stress, anxious mindset. So, and it switches day to day.
All the time.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
I had one question real quick. I'm intrigued by you saying, I know a lot of people say it, but it's really not all about the money. The way I look at the business has been increasingly more about the money as the team has grown and our family's growing. Buddy and I talk about this all the time, probably ad nauseum. Can you describe your relationship with money? Because it sounds like such a unique perspective to say it really is not. I just want to make sure the wife's taken care of and the kids are. But for me, it's like this is everything. If we're not killing it, then why am I doing this?
That's a great question, and let me clarify, because when I say money. It's not about the money. It's from a sense of like satisfaction or joy. When I was young, Jim Sundberg, who was the catcher for the Texas Rangers, and I think he was pretty amazing. I guess what they call a Golden Glove winner. Is that what it is? He spoke to our youth group, and he said, money won't make you happy, but it does make things easier. And that was the first time I heard someone kind of honestly not just dismiss it. And he's like, oh, no, it makes it easier. Like, if I want to go to Hawaii, I can go to Hawaii. But it doesn't make me happy because me and my wife can fight in Hawaii just like we can fight here. And so what I mean by that is I've been fortunate that whatever is within me, like money's not this motivator from like, I need more, I want more stuff. I've been able to watch and experience people who have it not be miserable. But from a business standpoint, I agree with you. Like, you have to be thinking about your rates, your profitability, your competitiveness in the market with your wages to your employees. Like, so yes. So I would say I look at my numbers a lot, but it's more of what's the conviction that's causing that. You know, I don't wake up and go, how do I get more money in my salary right now? You know, I do want to be able to pay for the kids' college, and they all have loans to a certain degree. Like, I don't want to. We don't have that kind of cash flow, but there's a scripture, and I'm going to butcher it, but it basically says the gist of it is, Lord, don't let me have too much that I might forget you and that I need you, and don't give me too little that I might steal and defile your name. And I read that 25 years ago, and I kind of joke that I prayed it. I'm like, gosh, I wouldn't have prayed that because he's not going to let me have too much.
Yeah.
But there's kind of that mentality of what enough's enough, but I do love growing and achieving, but it's weird. Like, my motivation isn't so we can have a bigger house or more cars.
Yeah, it's really helpful. That's great.
So
Thank you.
What is it for you, Daniel? When you were talking about your wrestling with the money, I heard you say about really thinking about taking care of your family. Where's the tension for you in it?
I think I'm in the midst of figuring that out. I think I'm in the midst of figuring that out because I don't fully understand where the tension is, and I can carry guilt. Sometimes I jokingly wish, man, it would be so easy not to be a Christian business owner. You know, if I was just a non-believer, then hey, it's all about the bottom line. It makes it so much more straightforward. But I think I'm currently working through this idea of my goal is to steward this business well, because it's not mine, it's the Lord's. And when I say that, it often feels like, well, then I'm sacrificing this idea of profitability because I'm just trying to steward things well for everybody else, you know. And there's a tension in there, and I'm trying to find it, and sometimes it makes me nervous. And then I think, man, I'm thinking way too much about the money, not enough about the product, or too much about the money, not enough about the employee. So it feels like I am in a season of just wrestling through that. And just to be honest, during it's the leanest month of the year for us too. So I think it's a good time to be wrestling through this and praying through it too. Yeah. But that's not answering your question. That's about as far as I've fleshed it out. That's where the tension rests heavy for me. Yeah. So I'm curious. I wrote it in the notes, like, what does your relationship look like with money? Having more maturity in years than we do, it's like, I'm eager to hear what you have to say.
Well, I mean, I'd say, Daniel, that's a tension to manage. It's not a problem you're going to solve. Like, that is a tension that's healthy and will be there for the long haul. And be comfortable with that. Like, in a way, that tension is what creates the pressure or the motivation to do that. Like, okay, I'm focused on the product. Nope, I'm focusing on, am I rewarding my employees well? Okay, we're in a season of life as your kids get older and go to college where I do need to be more thoughtful about them avoiding too much debt. But I also don't want to spoil them. I want my kids to have a little bit of the debt and ownership of paying that off, like so that they don't, squander it. So, but a wise person used that phrase with me once, and it helped me so much, mainly with HR issues. They said that's an attention to manage, not a problem to solve. And because I want to solve every problem. And so if I don't discern the difference, I'll burn a lot of energy on something.
That's
Attention.
I can do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tension to manage, not a problem to solve.
Yeah, that's good. I
And
love
marinate
that.
on it.
Love it. So this has been such a fruitful conversation. I think the last chunk of it, we'd love to talk to you about a question we love asking each of our guests, which is how they approach asking themselves what is enough. So Chad, what's your approach to that question?
Well, I'm probably at my age, so I turned 50 in March. So 4 kids, been in ministry for 15 years. The beauty of being in ministry is there's just tons of introspection. Like, I'm an achiever, so for me to obey the Lord usually involves slowing down because I have no trouble going too fast. And so when I think about that, or I've thought about that over the years many times, is, and this will sound like a mini sermon, like, I really believe that the Scripture teaches that God knit us together in our mother's womb, which is incredibly intimate, and that it says He prepared good works for us to do in advance, and it talks about that our work is an act of worship. And so for the 10 years trying to come on into ministry with Young Life, and then the 15 years serving, it was just really fulfilling and satisfying to kind of think it that way of like, okay, Lord, my responsibility is to cooperate with you to understand how you designed me. Not that the Lord is displeased if I work outside of my giftedness, but it's like I bring more glory when I work in my giftedness. It's like someone who can sing a beautiful song. It sounds more pleasant than if I sing a song because it's not my giftedness. And I would say, I think that translates to the business world. It's like when we work in the way God designed us, it's more satisfying for I think for me at least. And then I would hope for him as well. There's a great old clip from Chariots of Fire where the guy says, when I run, I feel God's pleasure. And so for me, it's enough is, am I working and living in a way that I feel God's pleasure? And so it's strange because money, I think money tends to come into that. And I don't want to be foolish and say it doesn't, but really for me, it's like, and one of the reasons I think I ended up leaving Young Life was I kind of knew it when I took the job, I was working in some of the areas that were outside my giftedness. And I think a danger for a man is doing things he's good at, but he doesn't bring him joy, and because most people tell you, oh, you're good at that, you should do it. And when you're younger, you fall into that trap of doing what other people tell you because they say you're good at it and you should do it. Instead of spending time reflecting with the Lord and saying, what do you want me to do and what did you design me to do, regardless of money, regardless of reputation. Because I guarantee you I didn't think I was going to be a dry cleaner. Mm-hmm. So, but there's such satisfaction in living in that spot of where you're like, oh, this is how you designed me. And I'm going to walk in that and live that out. So I would say it's kind of it's a paradox. Like, it's never enough because I'm always wanting to, I have this drive within me that some could just call it probably a mental defect of being an achiever or competitive. But also when I sit in the morning and I read Scripture and I pray, it's like, it's already enough. Like, I tell my wife, if I died today, I'm so grateful. Mm-hmm. So it's already enough, and it'll never be enough.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helped. That's the tension we're managing, Daniel.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's the tension.
We're not solving that problem.
That's great.
Oh, I love it. You
That's
said
great
that really
wisdom.
well. I feel like my approach to this question is pretty similar. And you said that really well. I totally resonate with that.
Yeah.
When Jill and I had that month last year where we had no new bookings, it was such that awesome gut check. And Jill kept saying over and over, she heard it from this guy, Jocko. He's like this Navy SEAL guy. But Jill would say, I'm like, oh, we had that awesome site visit and they loved it and just didn't decide not to book. And Jill would say, good. Like, that was okay, good. Like, just let's trust the Lord. Let's know that His plan for us is good. And even though, we would like to make money for sure, like you said, I'm not going to be foolish about that, but let's trust Him. Let's know that His provision for us, whatever it may be, is going to be the best thing. So good. They didn't book. Okay, we'll see what He has for us then. And it's a lot easier said than done. But that's the tension, like you said. That's it.
Absolutely.
It's rich. Well, can you sign off in the way we were just describing? What's important to you going forward as far as the audience?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, I know how grateful I am to like what we're going to call the ETA community, because people, when I would reach out to them on LinkedIn or phone calls to folks were willing to talk to me. So if there's anybody out there that's truly interested in this, I'd be happy to have coffee with you and offer what I can offer, or resources I can offer. And I'd say for if there's any business owners out there that are looking to sell, I'd be more than happy to have coffee and talk about the process, whether we're a fit or not. I just enjoy. I feel like I need to pay it back for the people that have helped me along the way. So, and for you too. Y'all. I'm not blowing smoke. Y'all have great voices. I'm afraid to hear what mine's going to sound like compared to y'all's. Y'all ask great questions, and I love that y'all's friendship and communicates through the radio waves. And so I think this is fun. And in the community, and I think your nearby listeners know this, but the listeners further away, like you both have a reputation for being incredibly great men and fathers, and generous to your employees. I don't know if y'all realize it, but my kids have worked. One of my kids have worked for both of you. So I'm still shocked at how much you pay I wanted Micah to come work for me, and then he told me how much he was making, and I said, you should stay there.
Yeah. When Daniel first told me, I was like, what?
Maybe this is the root of my trouble.
I may come work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank y'all for the podcast and the gift that is to other folks, and thanks for just the example you are in the community, really.
Well, back at you. That's very generous, and thank you for saying that.
Sure.
Yeah, Chad, thanks for coming on. Your humility is exemplary, and so many great takeaways for us, and hopefully all the listeners. So thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on. Be excited to watch you grow and learn from you, and that's the pod.
Bring in your dry cleaning.
Yeah, that's right.